Hi. It is Friday, May 27th, 2022, which means if you're watching this in the future, it's just a couple days after that horrible massacre of little school children down in Texas. I have been thinking of speaking on this topic, which is going to be trans people and transphobia, which is supposedly justified by certain esoteric or spiritual occult ideas in the wider community, and why it's a bunch of crap. People should cut it out for their own good, as well as even if you can't find it in your heart, to actually be kind to other people, which is one thing that's we're called to do in all these various traditions. So I've been thinking of speaking on this topic, and then this massacre happened, and as it happened, there was an intersection there, because one of the first rumors that came out was that people on the right who hate trans people anyway decided to create a false rumor, that a trans woman had been responsible for the massacre, and they found this woman on Reddit and stole her pictures and said that she was the shooter. As if there wasn't actual problems to address, actual terrible things going on, actual people to blame, the real shooter, the cops that sat around with their thumbs up their ass for an hour listening to small children die horribly. No, we have to find some random person, make something up. And this goes to the heart of what I think is a large part of the problem with people having these very strict ideas that they've made up in their head that they think are justified by facts and logic, let's say, or facts in the material world, facts in consensus reality. They don't have anything actually. If you take a look at history, archaeology, your own life, how you develop from a small child into a grown adult, you'll see that this is all not as cut and dried as these people try and make it to be. And so there's no true spiritual esoteric foundation for what they're trying to do. And it ends up just contributing to hate and just, taking an awful situation and just making it worse for a lot of people who just were living their lives. So I'm going to really try. I don't even know if I'm going to try. I'm so angry about, there's a ton of things going on, but this really aggravates me because it is so unkind. It really misunderstands something that's incredibly important to me, which is just the pursuit of truth and the pursuit of higher spiritual truth and the opening of our hearts. So I'm going to address it. I think I already have. I'm sorry. Oliver's giving me the stink eye for using modern language. Anyway, I'm sure I'm not going to convince anyone who, but I feel like it needs to be said in any case, because there's people in the community who are trying to justify these harmful and nasty actions by saying that there's some type of esoteric basis to what they're doing. And it's untrue, and people that are new on the path could get exposed to this. They might be vulnerable to it, and I want to at least try and give a warning. It may not do anything at all. So there's 4 qualities that I think are very important to anyone who is sincerely in pursuit of esoteric, occult, spiritual truth, that are lacking when you decide to make arguments like I have heard over the years, including up until very recently, that, well, I'm not going to use someone's pronouns just because they want to say that they're a girl or a boy or whatever, because, I don't care if they're offended, because, there's material facts about biology, and I'm not going to compromise my integrity by blah, 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 right? Okay. From where I sit, that has like 4 major drawbacks to the sincere spiritual seeker or esotericist. You are showing a true lack of compassion. I mean, this is the easiest gimme, right? When you meet someone just out on the street, in a business setting, whatever, do you start immediately interrogating, well, is that your actual name? Let me see your birth certificate. Is that really what's on there? If someone says, oh, this is my husband or this is my wife, do you start saying, really? I need to see the documentation. What makes you think I'm going to track this down and make sure that it was legal in the state where you were married before I'm going to actually acknowledge that person? That's, well, I hate to throw shade on the honest penis, but that's a real dick move, right? No one would do that. It's just rude. It's stupid. And as practitioners, we should be focusing on trying to cultivate compassion and trying to create a more loving a world where people can achieve their own individual potential more easily. And, it's such an easy thing to do, to just, if someone, says, can you use these pronouns? Just, make an effort for that. Don't use their dead name. Just call people what they want to be called. I mean, it's like little, little school children who are being bratty will deliberately misgender people or deliberately call them by, just variation on their name that's snotty or something, just because they know they're being a jerk and it's easy and they just want to get under people's skins. And you would think that by the time you're an adult, you would have grown out of this. I don't know how many different wisdom traditions I can direct you to that say things like, treat people as you would want to be treated, right? Don't be a jerk. Christianity, that's a pretty popular one. That head guy of Christianity was big. Was he going around saying, well, you need to just check everyone and make sure that they're dressing like a man, that they're really a man? No, he's like, you should clothe people who are naked. If people are hungry, you should feed them. You should go visit the people who are in prisons, right? If someone is having a worse time, shitty day, crappy life because of injustices in the system, just do what you can to help that. And there's a lot that's messed up in this world and it's just awful, and it's very difficult to know what to do to try and help. Sometimes all you can do is just treat people around you in a loving way. And this is an incredibly easy, super gimme way to do it. It will also help you to develop discipline. If you're like me and old and you're learning new things, it didn't used to be a thing. When I was younger, and the culture that I came from, I grew up like in the 70s. I graduated from high school in 1980. I like to tell people that so you have a context for me, and because obviously I'm only going to be speaking from my own experience. I'm not like some omniscient God being. Surprise. So this is telling you exactly what salt to shake onto what I have to tell you. But when I was younger, it was a lot more common in the gay and queer community to be a lot more fluid with people's gender pronouns and stuff, because it was like kind of a way to signal that you weren't on that strict of the straight whatever world. But now, things are different. And obviously, if you're just a decent normal person, you want to just, treat people with a little bit of respect. And this is like a super easy way. So for me, there's a little bit of thinking about it. But that's good if you are a esotericist, an occultist, whatever. It's good to keep your mind active, to learn new things, to be flexible. Pay attention to, so you're not like stuck back and listening to all the same songs that you listened to in high school and it's 80 years later. That type of thing. So yeah. Another quality that I think is important is humility, right? Here's the kicker with a lot of these people that pop off about, well, trans people, blah, blah, blah. It's like, who the fuck asked you? No one asked you. Who made you God? No one made you God, right? Maybe have a little bit of humility, not just put yourself forward there, and just, cool your jets a little bit. Of course, I'm popping off here. But I mean, honestly, you might learn something, you might meet some interesting people. I grew up in a time that was very diverse in a lot of ways. We had mainstreaming in our schools, so we had people with various physical and mental and developmental emotional abilities and stuff. when I was growing up, that's when the Center for Independent Living in Berkeley came about. And when I was growing up, you didn't see a lot of people with mobility problems around, partly because it was really hard for them to get around. But people worked to change that. It was a fact back then that, oh, well, if you can't walk, too bad for you, right? But people really work to change that. Now you have ramps and you have ADA compliant doors and restrooms, so people can actually go out, for a day or something, and be able to pee or whatever, like the rest of us. Um, Actually, I've had a lot of problems with mobility myself over the years due to nerve damage and stuff, and I appreciate a lot of those accommodations. So you got used to seeing people around who weren't, just the run-of-the-mill people. So you become more open to the fact of, people are different, and you start to judge people by the content of their character and their creativity, sense of humor, if you have hobbies that are similar, all that normal human stuff. Instead of just saying, well, this person looks like a freak, which is what I hear, sadly, to this day in a lot of areas. So maybe be a little humble instead of just thinking that someone is just over here trying to live their life and they don't necessarily want you coming in and telling them that everything that they know and think about themselves is wrong, which is pretty rich actually considered, especially with, people you don't even know. You don't know anything about them. So maybe take that into consideration. Getting back to discipline, I mean, I understand that sex and gender are huge topics, especially for us esotericists. You are interrogating your own received notions, experiences that you've had that may be traumatic. Um, uh, let's say experiences or type of relationships that you may have really desired that never came true, desires that you have that you've never expressed to anyone else, that you may feel very conflicted about. I don't want to do the thing, oh, obviously you're repressed, gay, whatever. I don't think that's it. I think that all of us, because we're in this society that has like a lot of issues with sex, and we come out of that, and gender, very patriarchal, misogynist society. I mean, we are fruit of that tree, so we're going to partake of the nature of that tree. So we have the opportunity to try and tease that apart a little bit and help heal that in our own relationships and our own relationship with sex and gender. So to immediately jump on what other people are doing, this should tell you something that if it's really, let's say, triggering you, upsetting, challenging, the sensible advice is to sit with that yourself and see maybe it's something about you, especially if it's just, people out there living their, like a guy with fingernail polish on should not necessarily be upsetting to people. It's not a huge deal in the wider scheme of things. I mean, we've had 2 god-awful massacres just in the last week. Why are you caring? And it's kind of mind-boggling, but with some people, it gets to this. And both of these massacres had to do with these identity issues in society, right? The one was motivated by race. The other looks to be motivated or enmeshed with very misogynist attitudes, and let's say fragile masculinity. So it should give us pause when we feel overwhelming surge of emotion to get involved in something like this. If we have a big reaction to, people who are presenting different than we think they should as far as gender or whatever. As esotericists, spiritual people, we should be focusing on ourselves. That's always, I don't know how many times when I was living with Lama Kunga, the Tibetan Buddhist teacher, Rinpoche. I don't know how many times he just like keep it focus on yourself, focus on the practice, keep your own nose clean, don't be, why. It's like when you're a little kid and, when mom and dad starts chewing you out for something you do, and you're like, well, but my brother, and they're like, we're not talking about him, we're talking about you, right? This is the path you chose as an esotericist or an occultist or pagan, any type of spiritual introspection, right? Keep focus on you. Why are you worried? If someone wants to, run around, well, I'm trying to think, however they want to run around, what is it to you, right? It's nothing to you. You need to worry about your own shit, I would say. Now, the thing, it all gets me. Actually, the main thing to make this clear that gets me is that it's just very unkind, and no one asked you. And why aren't you out there at a food bank or something if you're so concerned to be spreading your wisdom and whatever about your spiritual esoteric insight? All right, there's plenty of things you could be doing to make the world a better place besides just sticking your nose in other people's business. But another thing that gets me, as you know with me, there's always something else, is how wrong and ignorant this is just from the facts. As in the case with the rumor about the shooter of this massacre. They have to make something up to try and get at trans people because they don't have anything on the facts, right? I studied anthropology. I've always been interested in biology. And I studied physical anthropology, cultural anthropology, and archaeology. Even just looking at the representative chunk of times of cross-cultural, cross-times, human behavior, you do not have to go far at all to find out that there's always been different genders and people presenting differently. You can find a lot of societies that have very different ideas about what men should be doing, what women should be doing, what constitutes a man, what constitutes a woman, how much they care or don't about if someone's, physical presentation, in the body matches what they're doing in society. You have a ton of hermaphrodites. I have to say that hearing hermeticists get uptight about trans people, queer people, or whatever just kills me the most because Hermes had a child who was a hermaphrodite, right? And that's where the word comes from. So it's someone who blends the two aspects. Alchemists, right? The whole idea of the marriage of opposites. It all has to do with not getting so uptight and just constantly falling into kind of divided reality where you're only seeing one half of things, or so polarized, where you can be in the center and have a more expansive, loving consciousness, open-heartedness. From the biology standpoint, too, is just mind-boggling to me how these people manage to ignore so much of the actual biology of even just human sexual reproduction and sexes. I do not even know where to begin, right? I mean, we all start off with the same body plan, developing into a sexually mature, typical female, typical male as a human. It's a very complex process. It starts with the genes. You're subjected to various hormones at various times during your development, and it takes quite a while. And it doesn't always go according to standard plan. So you do get people who are intersex. You have people with a little more chromosomes, a little less chromosomes. You get, and this is an exciting one to me, there are people who are chimeras. you have more than one fertilized egg or embryo in the same uterus at the same time, and one will kind of subsume the other. There was an interesting case in Britain, and a woman was on government support for her children. I think she had 2 or 3, and for whatever reason, I don't know, these people don't have anything better to do. Anyway, the government decided that they wanted to DNA test her and her kids to make sure that she wasn't committing a fraud. So they said, it looks like you're their aunt. She's like, I gave birth to these children. They went there like, no, according to the DNA, which is always right, you're their aunt. So she contacted the OBGYN and he said, look, I delivered these babies from this woman. I was there, they're coming out. I'm catching up. Anyway, it turned out that she was a chimera, and so her, I guess that they probably just like swabbed her cheek or whatever. So most of her was one genetic makeup, but her reproductive tract and her ovaries were from the subsumed twin that she had, who was also female, and so she was genetically, part of her was genetically the aunt, but then of course she's also the mom. So it just goes to show that things, there's kind of a general trend of things, but then there's like all this other stuff that happens. That's just in humans. If you want to look at sex generally on planet Earth, sexual reproduction, which I think you should do if you are at all interested in sex, magic, or alchemy, or the process of manifestation in our physical universe, there are just so many different variations. There are some, I was like funguses or something that will have like 18 different genders. There is just, I mean, basically, that's the whole point of sex, is it's not like this slow, stately progression where it's very conservative and, you know, blah, 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 it's very careful. It's like you throw everything at the wall and you see what sticks, and crazy things happen. There's also a lot of parthenogenesis, which is when a genetic female organism is able to reproduce without any male contribution. So it's going to be the same genetic makeup, right? And recently, I love California condors. I've seen them free flying a few times. I love birds. They're an amazing bird. And it turns out that they've been having this breeding program for them for many decades now to help reintroduce them. They almost became extinct. So they monitor them very closely for DNA to make sure that they don't get a problem with any more inbreeding than is necessary. However, it seems that recently they found out that some of the female condors had kind of, for whatever reason, taken it upon themselves. There was male condors around there, but they're just like, who knows how this comes about? Maybe it was like the Thunderbird came down like Mary and Jesus, right? God. The Thunderbird God came down and sent a dove. And then these lady female condors are like, ta-da! With like the Jesus condor baby. I don't know how any of this happened, but the fact is that they managed to reproduce without any men. I am wondering, as time goes forward, if we'll find out if this is possible in humans or not. I didn't research it before I decided to do this talk, but yeah. So I would just say, if you're seriously head up about this and head up about the physical facts behind all this, you need to turn off Jordan Peterson and go out there and read some biology, read some science, because things are super wild out there. And it will really open your mind. Read some anthropology, some cultural anthropology too. There's just a whole different, a lot of different ways of approaching the idea. Now, human society as a whole, you're going to have gender, right? It's going to have some relationship to sex. But there's a lot of ways to slice that up. A lot of different ways to have families, a lot of different ways to support children as they're coming along. Oh God, there was some point I wanted to make here, and I forgot what it was. I'll just wrap up here. This is another instance of making things up. There are a lot of arguments that I see about trans women that people get upset because they think that that is going to interfere with women being able to play sports because they have the advantage if they transition, let's say later in life, that they would supposedly have certain advantages in competition. I saw a fascinating thread, and this shows how you can't just have prejudice against one group because it's always intersecting. And you always are just, if you're going to judge people by something besides the content of their character, then you've lost the whole game. Right there. I saw a thread by Dr. Sheree Bekker on Twitter, and she is talking about the whole idea of, women in sports and why there are separate competitions for women and men. And she has found a number of cases, for example, skeet shooting, other target practice, figure skating, ultra endurance sports, where in the Olympics, let's say, there was competition that was mixed with the sexes together. Then you have an instance where a woman takes the gold and suddenly, now we have to have separate categories for men and women, right? The wildest thing, there was a woman called Jackie Mitchell who was 17 years old, and in 1931 she had been signed up by I think it was like a minor league team. I'm terrible to talk about this. I don't know anything about sports. With a baseball team that was playing an exhibition game against the New York Yankees. So they had sent one pitcher in, and he wasn't doing that great. So they sent Jackie in, 17-year-old girl, pitching against Babe Ruth, struck him out. He was not happy. So they kept her in, and then Lou Gehrig came up. Now, Lou Gehrig had already seen Babe Ruth get struck out, so you think he would have been prepared, and he got struck out too. I can't believe, if I ever did something that amazing, you would never hear me shut up about it. So, of course, this is a massive moment it's just like one of these amazing things that happens. In sports, you don't really hear about it. And of course, after that was when they decided that, okay, there has to be a separate women's league, right? Because all these guys are butthurt because a teenage girl smoked them out, right? Yeah, they said, it's going to be too severe on women, so we have to protect them, right? Not to mention, I don't know what these people are. If you look at wrestling, boxing, football, baseball, golf, tennis, any type of sport where you are competing against other competitors, they always have these, ranking and weight classes and referees and umpires to make sure that people aren't like completely beating the shit out of each other. It's not like, okay, we're going to have a football game on Sunday and we're going to have every man in the town come over here and have like toddlers and 28-year-old weightlifters competing against each other on the gridiron, right? There's already all these kind of safeguards in place for making sure that there's some type of fair competition, that type of thing. And personally, it always gets me, just from my own experience, when these people say, we want to make sure that women can compete, because I am a klutz. I have no athletic ability, no endurance. I can literally be standing around and just fall over for no reason. So, it doesn't matter if I'm just competing against a bunch of women the whole time I was in school and everything, and I was always dead last. No one gave a shit then. But that's where you have other, type of pursuits, walking, hiking. I had yoga. So there's things that you can do so that you can get physically fit and have the enjoyment of the body, develop your endurance and whatnot, without having it have to always be this like fight to the death. I don't know. It's just nuts. I'll try and link that thread from Twitter because it's very pretty damning. She has any number of instances where it was fine to have women and men competing together until suddenly, yeah, a woman did great, and then we have to kind of reset the clock. So yes, I don't know. I don't know if this will convince anyone. I have gone on for a long time. All I can say is, if you are sincere, I try and be heartfelt. Look within yourself to try and see, why is this bothering me so much? And go forward that way, and find out something about the world that instead of just looking for things that confirm what you think that you want to be true, or what you were raised to believe, or what your current understanding of the texts that are important to you, or belief systems that are important to you, what you think that they're about. Just try and go out there and find out more about what's actually happening in the world. And yeah, because we're not going to get anywhere by ignoring reality. And reality is a lot wilder and woollier and more exciting than we're taught. And we have opportunity, even if it's just in a very small way, to be kind to other people and to open our hearts. So just, thank you for watching, and I appreciate all of you. And yeah.